dark moment to be a stranger in our city, to be a stranger in our country. An authoritarian government in Washington, D.C. is dispatching masked agents to abduct immigrants from our streets. That is not justice. It is cruelty, and it is criminal.
What's your response to him?
I can't even imagine how the people of New York City feel listening to that, knowing that if he were elected as mayor of New York, that they would have to continue to live with the dangerous criminals that are on their streets terrorizing that city right now. We've done so much work there as ICE officers and federal law enforcement officers getting dangerous criminals off the streets of New York. Literally hundreds and hundreds of them have been removed already in New York City because of President Trump's leadership. We need to continue to do that work, and we need a mayor that will work with us and have our backs when we're out there making sure we're going after those individuals. So if he were elected, New York City would be a train wreck, and those poor families would have nowhere to go for help.
All right. I am Ben Burgis. This is Give Them an Argument. I am joined, as always, by our very talented graphic designer, J. Andrew World, and for the final time, at least as producer, he may be back as guest, by our own Jake Abbott. So, yeah, this is I say this with a heavy heart, right? We're coming to the end of the Jake-ish era of Give Them an Argument. But it's all good things must come to an end sooner or later. And so yeah, we are saying goodbye to to Jake at the end of a 4-year run as GTAA producer. Usually producers in the show last about as long as drummers on Spinal Tap, but he actually lasted like about a presidential term worth of GTAA. So the basic plan for tonight is that for the first part of the show, we're just going to treat it like any other show, and then I'm going to toss the keys to Jake to kind of steer the direction of the rest of the show as he pleases. I think he's demanded drinking as part of that. I'm not really too clear on what else. We've also got alumni producer Cale Brooks waiting in the wings to join us in that part of the show. But is there anything else we should cover? Has anything been going on in the world? I haven't really been paying attention.
No, I think it's been pretty calm. I think I'm leaving it's a good time for me to leave because things are just going so well that I feel like I can step back and the world doesn't need my commentary anymore. You know what I mean?
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, everything's going really good.
Yeah. Trump was on the roof. It was great.
Yeah, I did like Trump on the roof. That was about the only good thing that happened.
Did you see John Oliver's commentary on it? He said that.
I did it.
He said that this is the perfect encapsulation of Trump's presidency. He's just standing there on the roof with everybody going, "What the fuck are you doing up there?" And he vaguely, badly gestures something kind of Nazi back to them.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, no, it's. I kind of enjoyed it because, like, on some level, I mean, look, my first conversation that I ever had with Michael Brooks, we both admitted to each other that as much as we thought he was a monster as a president, we both really enjoyed Trump as an insult comic, and like he's always just had a very funny way of being in the world, and that roof moment is actually one of the few times that lately that I've kind of seen little flashes of that. It's like, okay, that's actually just the funny Trump energy is kind of there.
Yeah, if you were to poll me on like, do you support Trump on the roof? I'd say yes without any hesitation. Like if they did the Gallup
underwater on the Jakes on every question, but but he's still maintaining his Jake approval rating on the being on the roof part.
Yeah, go back on the roof more. We want to see more of that. But
we have sinking boats with batteries and a roof. That's all I want.
But I think we have some more important stuff to discuss, at least until I derail the show later.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, look, obviously Trump sending the National Guard to Washington, D.C. and taking over the police force and all this sort of penny ante authoritarianism is very bad. I think we could be writing something about that for Unheard this week, probably. Stay tuned for that. I don't know that I have anything to say about it. Here beyond, gosh, that's pretty bad. But we do have some stuff to get into on the more depressing end of the spectrum, right? There's like, as far as like what's happened in the last 8 months, we have Trump on the roof on one end and the world's first live stream genocide on the other end. So, we are going to have to be spending some time on the bad end of that. But first, I think we have a few announcements to do before we go into the opening argument, and then bring in Cale, and then I can toss Jake the keys, as I said, for the rest of the show. But Andy, you want to go first? I think you've got a couple things.
Yeah, just a couple of things coming up. And wait, I think it's like a week from Tuesday. There is a fundraiser for my kids' high school art department, where a bunch of local bands are going to be getting together and performing as other bands. So it's called Transformance. They've been doing this for 35 years, and it's a absolutely blast. Absolutely check this out. Like this is absolute fun. But like I said, it's to raise money for the art department, and we got a great art department here at the high school, and it's funded by local artists, and so come out, say hi, and enjoy some great performances there.
Yeah, and I think you've also got something for a band that's been on the show before.
Yeah, Teen Driver is playing at the end of the month at JJ's. Both of these are in Florence, by the way, which is part of Northampton, but really a next town over. It's where Sojourner Truth lived. There was like a really fascinating history of Florence, but we don't have time to get into that. But that show is going to be great. I mean, it's Teen Driver. Like if you want a show that's like, wants to get you to yell about fuck ICE and you want to just scream about like Israel, like that's just the best place to go and do that. Do that with comrades to some great music.
Fair enough. So yeah, if you are in Andy's neck of the woods, that's what's coming up. If you are in mine, in Los Angeles, if you live anywhere in the vicinity of Los Angeles, on Saturday at 6 p.m. at the Village Well bookstore in Culver City, Meagan Day and I are going to be chatting with Pelle Dragsted, who is a member of the Danish parliament and the leader of the Red-Green Alliance Party, about his book, Nordic Socialism, The Path to a Democratic Economy. So really looking forward to that conversation. I think you can see the one that, so this is actually the last stop on Pelle's, U.S. tour, right, to promote the English translation of the book. But I think one of the first ones was in New York with Bhaskar Sankara and Eric Blanc. And I think that one you can see on YouTube, if you want to get an idea. If you are thinking about picking up a copy of the book rather than sort of getting one in advance and bring it for him to sign, I would suggest waiting to buy a copy at the bookstore, because it's good for us if we can move at least a few copies at the actual event. So again, that's Saturday, August 16th. So this coming Saturday at 6 p.m. at the Village Well bookstore in Culver City. And then last but not least, for everybody, right? You don't have to be in either Northampton or Los Angeles. I have teased before, finally doing this Capital Volume 2 class on the GTAA Patreon. So that is going to start in a couple of weeks. Took a lot longer to get there than we were thinking it would, because there was this other thing that Marx wrote called the Results of the Immediate Process of Production. We spent like 2 months going over, but We are ready to. So I'm going to be gone for a couple of weeks. We're taking a little break from the show for a couple of weeks. This is the season finale, and then I am going to be starting the Capital Volume 2 class on the Sunday of Labor Day weekend, and so that meets Sundays at 1 in the afternoon Eastern time. So, that's kind of the compromise we've come up with over the years, because for classes like this, because it's a day everybody's got off, and it's about the best compromise that I can figure out between the time zones of people who might want to join. It's not too early in the morning if you're here on the West Coast. It's not too late in the evening if you're in Europe. I mean, if you're in Tokyo, you might just kind of be screwed. I'm sorry about that. I can't figure out a good way around that. But for most time zones that people are likely to be in, if they join, that works. But then also, we are going to be starting a new round of the Capital Volume 1 class. That is going to, so that's going to start that same weekend. We're going to do that one on Saturdays. So same time slot, so I have to keep Sundays free for the class that just finished Volume 1. I
have an announcement, Ben, which is that I want to take the class. I'm not going to announce like I did 2 other times that I'm taking the class, but I want to announce that I want to. However, in the past, the fact that I was producing this show made it a little difficult to also devote more time to Ben Burgis activities. So maybe being released, maybe you guys can see me on this. Also, slow sounded pretty fucking good to me. The slow Capital class, so that might align with me. So I intend to take. I want to take it. Let's say that.
Hell yeah! So it's to be clear about that part, right? So when we say right on the graphic there, Capital Volume 1, but this time slower. Here's the idea, right? So this is going to be, depending on how you count it, the 3rd or 4th time I've taught a Capital class. I did a sort of complete run through Volume 1 on the Patreon twice, and I'm in the middle of doing an in-person version in LA. Like we're doing like chapter. I'm also on break for that for the next couple of weeks, but after that, right? We're finishing up chapter 15, and all 3 of those previous times we've barreled through even the early chapters at a rate of a chapter a week. Which in particular in those early chapters, but a lot of other stuff in the book also, it like really is like a very quick way to go through that book. I mean, some of the chapters are reasonable length, some of them are monsters, and some of the monsters we did break up into multiple weeks, but like generally we've been doing it a chapter a week. And then, but this time I thought it might be interesting to like really slow down, right? So this one, we're only doing a section a week, right? So chapter 1, for example, has 4 sections in it, right? So first week is just gonna be 1.1. We'll do 4 weeks on chapter 1. So obviously, the disadvantage of that is it takes much longer to get through the book, but the advantage of that is it's a much more manageable reading load every week, right? It's only 1 section of a chapter every week, and I think it'd be really interesting to do it that way. So which is why we're doing we're opening the second front in the Capital War, and doing a Saturday class to go back into Volume 1, even as we're doing Volume 2 on Sunday.
All right. So are there any other announcements, or do we want to hit them with some kind of opening argument?
Yeah. We're gonna do a shorter opening argument than we have, but we are gonna do an opening argument. I guess we're ready to go to that now.
Oh wait, we have the Ben's song first. Got to stream. Debunk all of it. Logical analysis. You're gonna show us how to argue. Go.
This is based on data from a bunch of different countries. There's abundant evidence that at this point. All right. So something fairly remarkable happened about a week and a half ago, which is that there was a vote in the Senate on Bernie Sanders' initiative to cut off the sale of assault rifles by the United States to the Israeli army. And there was a second resolution that he introduced that would have cut off several $100 million of general U.S. military aid to Israel. And in both cases, they failed, of course, because, you know, lots of Democrats and every single Republican voted against them. But the first one, like, got a huge majority of the Democratic caucus in the Senate, right? 27 to 17 Democratic senators voted for it. And even the second one got a majority, right? 24 Democratic senators voted for it. And it's hard to overstate how much of a sea change that is, how unthinkable it would have been a few years ago. I mean, even when you kind of keep in mind all of the flaws and limitations of these resolutions, that even the broader resolution only would have applied to so-called offensive weapons. And, you know, the offensive defensive thing, I think, is a bit of a dubious distinction, considering that, you know, money is fungible. So if you give somebody money, you know, to spend on their missile defense shield, that gives them that therefore frees up more money for them to spend on dropping 2,000-pound bombs on refugee camps. And of course, Israel has a much freer hand to initiate conflicts if they know that their defensive needs are covered. So, you know, the other side of those conflicts have a harder time retaliating. All right, all of that's true, right? But even when you bake all that in, this is still something that would have been an unthinkable vote a few years ago. Support for Israel has always been deeply bipartisan. And you just would not have had in 2021, 2022, 2023 even, you just would not have had resolutions to cut off even like most weapon sales to Israel getting these kinds of majorities. And it's a belated and partial reflection of a much bigger sea change among the Democratic voting base. About 32% of Americans at this point say they approve of Israel's actions in Gaza. And if you narrow the sample to just voters who consider themselves to be Democrats, that number goes all the way down to 8%, right? 8% of American voters who think of themselves as Democrats support what Israel is doing in Gaza. Unsurprising, perhaps, given that in the last 2 years, Israel has ordered millions of Palestinian civilians to leave their homes. The civilian death toll in absolute numbers has dwarfed major wars that have raged for years in larger countries. 2 years of indiscriminate bombardment have destroyed so many buildings that, one of the things I say in the Jackman article that I wrote about this, which is called The Problem with Israel is So Much Bigger Than Netanyahu, is that, you look at like aerial shots of Gaza. Increasingly looks like the surface of the moon. Everything has been destroyed. And now on top of that, the sort of use of food access as a weapon, which has led to mounting malnutrition over the last 2 years, is now tipping over to the point where, you have several dozen, I think, documented and hundreds of likely cases of deaths by starvation. You have images that are coming out from Gaza that are, really haunting. Like some of this stuff makes me think of the images of the Musselman at Auschwitz. And so under those circumstances, perhaps it's unsurprising that there's been this sea change, but it has led shitty centrist Democrats to scramble to figure out a response. So there's this article in CNN that's about so I think the title of this is Pro-Israel Democrats Try Breaking with Netanyahu to Stop Party Shift Among Gaza Crisis. And basically the gist of the article is that a lot of Democratic politicians are trying to thread the needle by saying, oh, well, sure, we support Israel, but we don't like Netanyahu, right? Netanyahu goes too far. Netanyahu is bad. Right, as a sort of way of compromising between the preferences of the Washington, D.C. policy blob and the sentiments of their own voting base. And I think this goes along with a very widespread kind of feeling among a lot of Western Zionists, right? A lot of Western Zionists are, good liberals in their overall worldview, right? And there's always been a sort of strange disconnect between those values of sort of support for democracy, liberal pluralism, that they would espouse in all other contexts with support for an exclusionary ethno-state that's ruled over millions of people without giving them citizenship on the other. And certainly the idea that the occupation of the Palestinian territories was ever seriously intended to be temporary is very hard to reconcile with Israel's longstanding policy of building settlements, right? Building, in other words, cities full of its own citizens on this territory. It's not generally something you do if you seriously intend to give it up at some point in the future. Nevertheless, I think a lot of liberal Western Zionists tell themselves a story that goes something like this. Of course, I don't like the occupation of the West Bank and Gaza. If it were up to me, it would have ended long ago. I wish there weren't all these settlements. And in the long term, I'd like there to be a two-state solution. But Israel has a right to exist as a Jewish state, and it has a right to defend itself. The problem is that the Israeli right is in charge right now instead of the Israeli left. They don't want a two-state solution, and they're fighting the war in Gaza in a bad, unrestrained, disproportionate kind of way. But that doesn't mean I'll stop supporting Israel. I'll just, or that I think the United States should stop supporting Israel. I'll just keep the liberal Zionist faith while I wait for the Israeli opposition, who are surely sensible two-state liberals like me, to take power. And the problem is that while there are bits and pieces of truth in this story, right? It's true, for example, that Netanyahu has lost elections before, and he may again. The basic premise that there's this sensible liberal opposition waiting in the wings that will stop the mass murder and displacement of Palestinians and move towards a two-state solution is just really disconnected from observable reality right now. Last year, the Knesset, right, so it's Israel's parliament, voted by a margin of 68-9 for a resolution explicitly opposing the creation of a Palestinian state anytime in the foreseeable future, basically. I think there's a line in the resolution that says, like, at this time. But the rationale they give would be basically, as long as there's any kind of Israeli-Palestinian conflict going on, it would be a reward for terrorism, and you can't do it. And they even refer to the West Bank as the heart of Israel and all that stuff. All 9 of the members of the Knesset who voted against it were from the majority Arab parties. The only Israeli Jewish no vote was from this guy, Ofer Kasif, who, is somebody I would certainly regard as a heroic figure, but, he's definitely not representative of the mainstream of the anti-Netanyahu opposition in Israel. This is somebody who's been beaten by police at protests, for example. Last year he narrowly escaped a vote to expel him from the Knesset for supporting South Africa's genocide against Israel, a genocide case against Israel at the International Court of Justice. And so when you say, oh, well, the problem is just Netanyahu, right? There's no sort of issue with Israeli state or society that has led to this that goes any deeper than Netanyahu, then, okay, do you think Ofer Kasif is about to be the next prime minister of Israel in the next election? Because, man, I'd like to think so, but I don't think so. I mean, this is a guy who's, if you go back and look, I actually link it in my Jackman article. If you go back and look at his PhD thesis at the London School of Economics, Ofer Kasif's dissertation was called On Nationalism and Democracy, a Marxist Examination, which sounds interesting. I'd actually like to read that, but it does not sound like somebody who's exactly in the, sitting at the center of Israeli political opinion. And I think what you have to deal with is that Israel's political spectrum tilts so far to the right, not primarily because of anything that's happened in the last several years, although some of that is certainly exacerbated and taken it to a much darker place than it would have even been otherwise, but because of its core identity as an exclusionary ethno-state. Even if you say, okay, you can look at all these things, since the breakdown of the 90s peace process, and, the Second Intifada, and, all of that, right? You can look at a general swing to the right, and especially in the last several years, and then really into this kind of genocidal mania in the last 2 years since October 7th. I mean, to the point where I link in the article to polls where like 80-something% of Israeli Jewish respondents say that they would support forcibly relocating everybody in Gaza out of the country. And in fact, more than 50%, I think like 56%, say that they would support even forcibly relocating all of the Arab citizens of Israel out of the country, right? So this is particularly dark, but I think that the normal resting point of Israel's political compass, right, the pendulum, like, just starts out at a place that's way, way, way to the right of what's normal in any, Western liberal democracy for structural reasons, because of the way that Israel is constituted. And that's the last point that I wanted to talk about, because I think this is where a little bit of Marxist analysis of the world can actually help you, not necessarily see how we get out of it. I mean, obviously, obviously we should be fighting to cut off US aid, but it's realistically, it's very hard to see what the path out of where we're at now looks like. Is very, very grim. But at the very least, if the first step is understanding the world, right? I think a little bit of Marxist analysis can help with that. So let's think about this a little bit. That oftentimes left-wing anti-Zionist writers will compare Israel to apartheid South Africa. In fact, that's a comparison I've made in probably like a dozen Jacobin articles over the years. And I think this comparison does get a lot right. I think certainly if you look at, sort of standard definitions of apartheid, I mean, what goes on in Israel is a very clean fit. You have, you've got millions, like, just to start out with, you've got all the millions of descendants of Palestinian refugees from the original ethnic cleansing who aren't allowed to come back, including, certainly, I don't know the exact numbers, but I'm pretty sure like hundreds of thousands of people sitting for their whole lives in refugee camps in other countries. And, very explicitly, the reason no mainstream Israeli politician would ever say, yeah, we should allow those people to come back, is because that see it as a demographic threat. You would have too many of the wrong members of the wrong ethnic group in the country. That once you added the existing Arab citizens, in other words, the people whose families ended up on the Israeli side of the Green Line after the initial ethnic cleansing and were eventually granted citizenship, although not until the mid-60s, you add those people to Palestinian refugees and certainly people on the West Bank, and then you've got too many of the wrong ethnic group, right? So when you have a state that's fundamentally constituted in a way that's considered to be a decisive consideration, that already tells you something. And then certainly when you look at what's happened since 1967, when particularly in the West Bank, Israel has absorbed that territory into its own territory for every single purpose except for extending citizenship and voting rights to Palestinians who live there. Because again, if they did, you'd have too many Arabs, right? And nobody is shy about saying this out loud in Israeli politics. That is the reason. Certainly, yeah, like on the West Bank, you have all these Israeli settlers who, can vote in Israeli elections. If they're accused of crimes, they're prosecuted under the regular Israeli legal system, whereas Palestinians who live a few miles away, cannot vote for the people who rule over every aspect of their lives outside of whatever subcontracted to the Palestinian Authority. But I mean, that's nothing like an independent government. If Israel accuses them of terrorism, they're tried in a military court, right? Not a real civilian court. So you have two different legal systems, two different sets of rights, depending on ethnicity. It's apartheid, right? The sort of usual counterpoint that, what about the Israeli Arabs? I think kind of misses the point pretty massively, both because there is all sorts of discrimination against them that would be illegal in any normal Western democracy. Like, for example, in housing discrimination, about 13% of the land in Israel is owned by the Jewish National Fund, which on a personal note makes me a little sick to think about, because I can remember at the bagel shop I used to go to in downtown East Lansing, I remember I'd occasionally drop a little bit of change into the little J&F box because it seemed like a innocuous good thing to do, and that makes me feel fairly ill thinking back to it. But it's the J&F's policy is explicitly discriminatory about who they'll lease land to. And Israeli law allows any community with less than 700 permanent homes to maintain a selection committee that decides whether you're socioculturally compatible with the community, which in the US would call Jim Crow. But of course, even if absolute pristine equality reigned between Israeli Jews and those Palestinian families who ended up on the Israeli side of the line after 1948, so they eventually got citizenship, that would still be irrelevant to the charge of apartheid, because of course the point is that you have millions of Palestinians on the West Bank who, even as the West Bank is more and more absorbed into Israel, even as the Knesset says there won't be a two-state solution, aren't granted equal citizenship rights because they have the wrong ethnicity. That's apartheid. Okay, so all of that's to say, I do think that there's something that the analogy to apartheid South Africa gets very importantly right. But unfortunately, there's also something that gets wrong, because there are even worse possibilities than that. And I wrote with my good friend Michael Seckman, who I've been like co-writing some academic papers with and stuff. We co-wrote an essay that appeared on the Substack on Sunday, Philosophy for the People. It's called John Romer, Karl Kautsky, and the Political Economy of Israel-Palestine. And in it, we drew on some things that the economist and analytical Marxist thinker John Romer says in his book, Egalitarian Perspectives, and about how he understands what economic exploitation is. And economic exploitation is something that's much more specific than just inequality or even economic oppression. The jobless and homeless populations of major cities are certainly economically oppressed, right? The owners of the means of production lock them out of the system and deprive them of sort of basic necessities of life. And so they're certainly oppressed by the economic system, but they're not exploited. And, just again, read the essay if you want the particulars, but I mean, the one way of understanding the John Romer point is that if that population disappeared tomorrow, then from the capitalist perspective, that'd be great news. That would be a social problem solved painlessly. Whereas if the working class disappeared tomorrow, that would be disastrous news, because the working class is the source of the capitalist wealth. That's the difference between being oppressed, but not economically oppressed, but not economically exploited, and being economically exploited, that your labor is the source of your exploiter's wealth. And we connected this up to something that Karl Kautsky says in his book, I think from 1907, Socialism and Colonial Policy. And in there, he makes this distinction between two different kinds of colonies. And he's kind of expanding on a point that Marx makes, at least by implication, in the last chapter of Capital Volume 1, where he talks about colonies, and Marx makes a distinction between what he calls like true colonies and other kinds of colonies. And in here, and this isn't the only place or the first place where he says it, but it's the place I'm familiar with. In here, Kautsky makes this distinction between what he calls work colonies and exploitation colonies. This is the first of the two Kautsky quotes, the shorter one. He says, if we wish to investigate the significance of colonial policy for the development of the productive powers of mankind, there's one sharp distinction we must make. There are two kinds of colonies which are as different as fire and water. Anyone who confuses them instead of clearly distinguishing between them will never attain a clear understanding of the colonial question. And so again, these are going to be work colonies and exploitation colonies. And the second quote, I think he gives the distinction. So he says the work colony is settled by members of the working class of the motherland, craftsmen, wage workers, and particularly peasants. They forsake their native country to escape economic or political pressure and to found a new home for themselves free from such pressure. Such a colony rests upon their own labor and not on the labor of the subdued natives. On the other hand, an exploitation colony is settled by members of the exploiting classes of the motherland, where the booty did not suffice them, who therefore aspire to extend the field of their exploitation. They go to the colonies not in order to find a new home, but in order to forsake the colony when they have squeezed enough out of it, not to escape pressure at home, but in order to become capable of exerting even greater pressure in the motherland. The economic utility of such a colony does not rest on the labor of the colonists, but on the plundering or forced labor of the natives. And here's the point, that the distinction that Kautsky is making here is roughly what the distinction people often have in mind when they use the term settler colonialism. I think Kautsky's sort of way of framing it is maybe more helpful. But when they make a distinction between settler colonialism and other forms of colonialism, and where the settler colonialism would correspond to the work colony as opposed to the exploitation colony. And so, I disagree with the normative views of a lot of the people who most like to throw around the term settler colonialism, and I often disagree about how useful that is in terms of understanding societies that started that way but are now very different. Because of centuries of development since then, right? That's no longer really relevant to the political economy of those countries and how those work. But I think the basic distinction that Kautsky is making is really important. And this brings us to the limits of the analogy to apartheid South Africa. Because neither the 20th century Republic of South Africa nor the 20th and 21st century State of Israel were colonies in the literal sense, both by the mid 20th century, about the same time, had a little bit more complicated in the South Africa case because there was like a gray area period for a while. But by the late 20th century, they both achieved independence from Great Britain. The South Africa by 1910 or something, it was a quasi-independent dominion, and by the early 60s, it was an independent republic. Israel, of course, 1948. So they both achieved independence. They were no longer literal colonies. But if you look at in both cases, the dominant ethnic group in those two places and how they related to the dominated ethnic group in those two places, it does at least roughly parallel Kautsky's distinction that South Africa worked like a classic exploitation colony, whereas Israel works like a classic work colony. In other words, in the work colony model, you're trying as much as possible to push out the indigenous working class in favor of your own labor force, in favor of, in this case, the Israeli Jewish working class. So the distinction is that in the South African case, white elites were enriched by the labor of the Black working class. Whereas in the Israeli case, it's really not true for the most part that Israeli elites are enriched by the labor of the Palestinian working class. Because again, the whole logic of the situation has largely been as much as possible to push them out of the economy entirely. They're, guest worker, from Gaza and all that stuff. It's a little uneven if you look at the whole history of it over time. But I think viewed from 10,000 feet, that's a distinction that's very much valid here. And this, I think, can unfortunately explain this disanalogy between Israel and apartheid South Africa. Can, I think, unfortunately explain what's going on. Right? So again, I don't want to conflate the normative issue with the descriptive issue here. Again, I think normatively, a lot of the people who love the phrase settler colonialism the most, I think, kind of have this weird fetishization of any sort of movement they see as anti-colonial, and I think often advocate things that don't really fulfill democratic ideals, and if anything, sometimes rhetorically flirt with the suggestion that we'd want to reverse the direction of exploitation. I disagree with all that. I also disagree with some of Kautsky's normative views, because there are passages in there where he sort of says, well, maybe the work colonies aren't so bad. The treatment of the natives is often to be condemned, but maybe the foundation of them isn't, right? So I think in both cases, there are normative things they get right, but I think at the descriptive level, this can unfortunately help you understand the situation. So Eric Olin Wright, in his book Class Counts, has, I think, a fairly chillingly appropriate line about this. He says that there's a reason, right? He says it's no accident that American culture has historically included the abhorrent saying the only good Indian is a dead Indian, but not the only good worker is a dead worker, or the only good slave is a dead slave. In other words, as bad as the injustices inherent in capitalist exploitation are, there are far worse outcomes than being exploited. And what we're seeing playing out in a dramatic fashion in Gaza is one of those possibilities, right? That when an ethno-national project turns whole populations into problems to be solved, horrors ensue. A recent poll found that as I said, right, a majority of Israeli Jews would support not just expelling all the Palestinians in Gaza, but expelling even all the Palestinians in Israel proper who have Israeli citizenship. And there's a reason that you didn't get that in South Africa, right? There's a reason that there were never any polls, as far as I know, in the history of South Africa, where a majority of white South Africans said they would support forcibly expelling every single black person from South Africa. There's a reason why the South African military never went through the Bantustans, destroying every single church, every single school, every single hospital, and turning the whole thing into something that looked like the surface of the moon. There's a reason that, you know, P.W. Botha never engineered a famine to try to make life so miserable for Black South Africans that they would just quit the country en masse and leave it to the white population. Because again, when you're exploiting people, then their disappearance would be a disaster for you, right? Because you need their labor. But when you have forms of economic oppression that are not based on exploitation, that's even worse. And things like genocide come onto the table as possibilities, which does mean, ironically, I mean, Michael and I said this at the end of our Substack essay. If we did get, right, I mean, the most ideal solution, which would be, the single secular democratic state in Israel-Palestine, assuming that we hadn't overcome capitalism before that happened, then that would mean that normal structures of capitalist exploitation would now integrate the Palestinian population, right? If everybody had equal rights in that state. And again, exploitation is very bad. Our whole thing as socialists is that we want a world without exploitation, but as long as we live in a class society, there are much worse things. And ironically, we're actually in a situation where upgrading this population's status, upgrading their form of oppression to exploitation would not only be an improvement, but an urgent moral imperative. Now, again, I don't want to sort of lie for the sake of make everybody feel better, to be optimistic. I have no idea what the path from where we are right now to a single secular democratic state would look like. I don't think anybody really does in any concrete short-term way. The situation is that bad. Similarly, it's very hard to see what even forcing Israel to accept a two-state solution. It's very hard to see the path from there to from here to there. Again, I mean, the sort of the mania of the course they're on right now is so bad that it's very hard to see a scenario in the near future, at least short of a massive sea change in U.S. policy, where that happens. So I don't know how it would happen, but I do know that at the very least, we need to fight to stop supplying any weapons to this state for as long as it exists in anything like its present form, because the possibilities for how those weapons are going to be used are only going to get more nightmarish.
Oh, wait, we have the Ben's song first. Got to stream. Debunk all of it. Logical analysis. You're going to show us how to argue that. Go.
This is based on data from a bunch of different countries. There's abundant evidence that at this point.
All right. Having fucked it up, because that's so much of a downer that I don't know how we come back from here. Jake, here's the key.
Oh, thank you for the key to this fucked up car. No, so I thought about what I want to do as my last episode as producer, and I don't want to go as far as hopium, using that word, right? Because that was my first thought, and on a positive note, I don't think we're necessarily in a positive time, right? But we are going to try to have some fun, and I'm going to try a difficult transition to from what you were just talking about to some things that are a little bit more entertaining and light while still being substantial. First of all, though, to inaugurate the fun, I do want to bring on our good friend of the show, former producer of the show, Cale Brooks. Welcome to the show, Cale. Thank you for hanging tight. We went a little long, which we never do, but welcome back to the show, Cale.
First time in the history of the show, I think we've gone.
Yeah, it's true. Good to see you guys. Jake, brought your cap and gown, so hope you're ready for your first session.
Yeah. This all started with a drink session with me and Cale, I think like 4.5 years ago, where Cale was like, there might be this opportunity for you. And then we had a really good time. And then I came home and my girlfriend at the time was like, why are you like being really strident and yelling and about all different types of like propaganda and stuff? And I was like, oh, I was just hanging out with my friend Cale. It kind of gets me in that kind of mood. Yeah.
You guys don't realize how drunk I had to get Jake in order to turn him into the new producer.
Yeah, I was just like drunkenly railing about identity politics and stuff when I came home. So if that ever happens again, like, oh, you're hanging out with Cale. Yeah.
By the way, before we entirely leave the other subject behind, just because I could not fit it in, after that Substack essay came out, somebody pointed out to me that Karl Kautsky did actually write a little bit about Zionism. He was against it in a chapter of his book, which has the very probably don't read it on the subway title, "Are the Jews a Race?" To be fair, though, his answer is no. And I haven't actually read this book yet, but I'm told that there's a point in the book where he actually looks at studies of nose lengths in order to refute the claim that Jews in particular have big noses.
Yeah, that's what on the subway you want those diagrams open right next to it. the phrenology diagrams open. So I do have a way of transition actually, which is included in the topic at hand, which is a good way to go from serious to a little bit goofy. I think is Pete Buttigieg, who kind of straddles the line of both. So on the subject of Israel Palestine, Cale, I know we didn't warn you, but you're a producer. You know how to go with the flow. But this is what Pete had to say on. I believe Ben sent this to me, but on whether Palestine should be recognized as a state. I believe
more than half of Senate Democrats just voted to oppose the sale of over $500 million worth of U.S. bombs and guns to Israel. Would you have voted to oppose sending those weapons?
I think we need to insist that if American taxpayer funding is going to weaponry that is going to Israel, that is not going to things that shock the conscience. And look, we see images every day that shock the conscience. So much of this is complicated. But what's not complicated is that if a child is starving because of a choice made by a government, that is unconscionable. And I think especially including voices who care about Israel, who believe in Israel's right to exist, who have stood with Israel in response to the unbelievable cruelty and terrorism of October 7th. I think there's a reason why so many of those voices are speaking up now too. Because this is not just something that is on its face and in itself a moral catastrophe. It is also a catastrophe for Israel for the long run.
How do you think the next administration should handle our relationship with Israel? Do you think it should change based on what Netanyahu has done the last several years?
Well, certainly Netanyahu can't be the only voice or the only compass for what should happen in the U.S.-Israel relationship. And, no matter how strongly, or especially because of how strongly you might believe in Israel's right to exist and defend itself, you don't have to make excuses for the choices that Netanyahu is making, especially because they are often made not only in the name of the Israeli people, but in the name of a U.S. alliance. I think that we, as Israel's strongest ally and friend, you put your arm around your friend when there's something like this going on and talk about what we're prepared to do together. And it certainly cannot be what we see right now from this administration and this president talking about beachfront property in Gaza before he's prepared to talk about human suffering in Gaza.
Do you think it's time to recognize a Palestinian state?
I think that's a profound question that arouses a lot of the biggest problems that have happened with Israel's survival, Israel's right to survival in the diplomatic scene. And many of the people who have taken that step historically have done so for different reasons than what we see happening with European countries. I think we need to step back and we need to do whatever it takes to ensure that there is a real two-state solution and that no one, not even the likes of Netanyahu, can veto the international community's commitment to a two-state solution where you have Palestinians and Israelis living with safety, with security, with rights. I believe that can happen, but we have to actually show some commitment to it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I like everything up until that last question about statehood was like, it was like a little slimy and evasive, but it was like normal Pete Buttigieg stuff. That last one, I felt like there were parts of that last answer that sounded like a contestant at a beauty pageant being asked a question that she just has no idea what the answer is to, and so she just kind of has to start riffing.
The maps of the Americas, or was that the beauty contestant a few years ago? Like 20 years ago?
I don't know.
Yeah, just a few years ago.
Yeah,
it's current reference.
Yeah, making a reference from 20 years ago. Yeah, there was a beauty contest where the contestant's like, I think that there needs to be more maps so people will know where the Iraqs and places like that are.
Yeah, exactly. Cale, you had something too?
I was just gonna say, it's shocking how difficult it is to listen to him. Like I take so much energy to hear the next word he's saying because I'm falling asleep.
I'm producing this show. I checked my phone. I'm not lying. In the middle of that, I instinctively reached for my phone and checked Instagram because I was just getting so bored.
Well, that's the
Buttigieg
appeal, is that you're just enjoying the dopamine of your phone.
And he's just like there's like a calm, relaxing voice in the background. But I agree. The first part, I was like, the actual substance, I was like, okay. And then when he started,
was he even answering the question though? I mean, it was kind of on the.
It was on the line. He just was like,
yeah, he's a little evasive, but yeah.
What happening bad is basically what he was saying.
Yeah.
But then
I don't like seeing the people who get blown up by our bombs.
Yeah. He said that he said it's on statehood though. He said it's a profound question that arouses. I can't even finish the quote, but I remember he said it's like a profound question that arouses the deep history. Like that's basically a word salad to your point.
Yeah.
So
well, he's a great speaker apparently. So liberals.
I mean, he kind of can be though, but the fact that he could not find a way to thread that line, I think it's because there's no morally defensible way to even do that, But what I was gonna say is, and this kind of transitions into what I wanted to talk about on the show. Is basically I wanted to talk about things that are positive, and not for a reason just so that like we feel better about ourselves, but I kind of wanted to reflect on times that maybe like we thought that nothing good could happen and something good could happen. But before that, Cale, you're going to kill me. I'm going to subject you to 1.5 more minutes of Pete Buttigieg talking. But Cale's about to fucking leave. But I feel like there's something interesting here. And I actually think the first minute of what he said is pretty good. And I actually liked the TikTok that I found this, and then I unliked it at the end. So let's check this out.
As we speak, the federal government is taking over the policing of a major American city, Washington, D.C. The president is doing this not in order to make the city safer, that's the job of local law enforcement, but to solve his own political problems. He needs to get his base talking and thinking about something besides his refusal to open up the Epstein files because he's mixed up in them. And he wants the rest of the country focused on something, anything, besides the work that he has done and continues to do to kick millions of Americans off of their health insurance, to close down rural hospitals, and to undermine basic functions of our government in order to pay for tax cuts for the wealthiest. I hesitate to use a word like distraction, even though distraction is part of his goal, because it is a legitimately important thing that he is taking power in this way. And he has threatened to do it in other cities, maybe the community where you live, maybe the community where I live. So how are we supposed to handle this? We have to deal with both. We have to stand up to the dangerous, authoritarian actions that the president is taking and keep a focus on the everyday impacts of his disastrous and unpopular economic policy and budget. We can and must do both.
Okay, Cale's regretting agreeing to come back today. But
I'm not gonna lie. I responded to a couple text messages.
Yeah, what I just want to point out is I think
I
his
made a
analysis-
cameo on a different show while he was speaking.
Yeah, you were on Doug Lane sublation for a little bit right there. But being like the show I'm currently on doesn't understand Marx. But anyway, I'm drinking a whiskey right now, so it's kind of like no holds barred right now. But what I was gonna say is but the point I wanted to make, why I wanted to play that, is I actually think his analysis was kind of good in the beginning, right? I was like, okay, this is not bad. And then he says, we need to stand up and keep focused. So what the fuck does that? I actually saw, I think his supporters on TikTok being like, what should we do? Like, tell me what, because he was like, here's what we do. And I was kind of with him. And he's like, we tried to stand up. And I mean, I know, like, you know, there's protests going on in LA and DC right now. Is that what he means? Does he want you to go out and throw a Molotov cocktail? Does he even want you to go out and march? He couldn't even bring himself to say that. What did he say? Stand up? I have no idea what he means at all.
No, I think what he was calling for was a general strike.
Yeah. So what we have to do, guys, is we all have to withhold our labor, just like my father would have advocated. But yeah, I think so. The reason this brings me to what I wanted to talk about Zoran today, and I get some people watching, electoral politics might not even be your thing, but in terms of like getting involved with something actionable, something that you could actually tap into your community, what I want you guys to focus on is, I think most of us, like when you're trying to figure out what you believe and what your ideology is, or your theory of like what's going on in the world, you think, when was I wrong, right? And I think it's really easy to focus on when you were wrong, when you thought something good would happen and something bad happened, right? So if you're like, oh, I thought Bernie would win, but actually he lost, so I was a fucking idiot, like nothing good ever happens, right? But I want to focus on, I was super pessimistic about a lot of the most exciting developments for the left in the last, like, since I've been on the show, basically. I mean, this timing, again, I don't know what you think about AOC, but I remember our union. I worked for a union at the time that very progressive, wasn't supporting AOC at the time, because it was like she had no chance to win. The genius political, and he is a genius, but the really smart political director of our union was like, she has no fucking chance against this guy, right? AOC won. I thought, like, I really didn't think that Amazon would win any of their union elections. I didn't think that the Starbucks campaigns would really pick up steam. And I thought that Zoran, like my friends who were talking about Zoran, I was like, are you kidding? Like, do you know how like Islamophobic people are? Like this guy has no chance. So I mean, I think it's, yeah, go ahead.
I will say there's somebody who, you know, I won't name, but has been a guest on this podcast several times. You know, people know who he is, who I could still remember, because it makes me feel so smug, standing around at a bar in LA with him in December 2021, when there was exactly one unionized Starbucks, and having him be like, yeah, that's not going to turn into anything. There won't be any more, right? I was like, hey, you don't know that, man. But conversely, I can remember a couple days before the mayoral primary, and since the other guy in this conversation was right, I will name him, not the same person. Jason Miles is like sitting out. I think we were like going out to breakfast in Rosarito, and I was like, man, it's going to be so sad when Zoran comes heartbreakingly close to winning on Tuesday. And he was like, well, why do you think that? And I was like, I don't know, just a general sense of how reality works, like the universe, like that's like that nothing people online think is going to happen ever really happens. Like that's just, you know, I don't know, good stuff doesn't happen. Why would good stuff happen?
Yeah, exactly. Cale, did you have something on that?
I mean, not that this matters, but I did think he was going to win like 4 or 5 months out. But I had no good reason to believe that. Just it was something I was kind of hoping for. Yeah. And I was like, you know, we've been doing this for a few years. Maybe this will be the one, because there's a lot of energy. He's a uniquely talented politician, and Cuomo is a uniquely bad opposition.
Yeah.
So
yeah, Yeah, and Zoran hasn't won the general yet. We should like temper our excitement.
Yeah, but it's no, I'm not tempering. It's going to be a landslide.
Okay. You heard it here first. But I was just, but yeah. So my point was, it's not like the well, I was about to say it's not like the universe like goes by any specific laws, but maybe we don't want to say that in a Marxist sense. But the point is that like there's no law that like bad things will happen or good things will happen. I'm not trying to be a Pollyanna and
There
say
are like
that.
a few laws about the forces, relations, of production.
Yeah, that and everything else is completely random. But my point here isn't to say like, oh, like we need to have so much hope, because I do think the world is in a worse place than when I started the show. But I think if there's something you're considering tapping into, like, I mean, I was even like you can get tapped into, even if you're in like, you could try to organize your workplace, or you could be in solidarity with, like, let's say like Amazon or Starbucks. Like I was on helping, like doing picket line support a couple months ago, thanks to my buddy Jay, who we're going to have in the post game. Or if you want to canvas for Zoran, whoever it is, like individual tactics or individual campaigns, sometimes they do turn out well, right? So I just don't want people to give in to their pessimism, because some things do actually work out. And I think the only way to really start fighting back on a personal level against the depressing shit we talked about on this show is to actually try to tap into something that you can physically go to. I mean, if you want to do like a Zoom phone bank, that's good too. But I think, there's certain dopamine that actually happens when you that starts hitting your system when you go out in person and try to support something. So I wanted to focus on the thing that has me excited, which is Zoran. However, it would not be GTAA if we did not have different videos of some of the most annoying idiots on the planet talking about Zoran. So the first clip that we have that we can comment on is from friend of the show, Bill Maher, on Club Random, recently weighed in on Zoran. I actually am kind of I was going to say a non-ironic fan of Club Random, but I guess I'm an ironic fan. But I think it's I love that show. I think that's a hilarious program.
Well, just because this is, we could be a little meta here, right? Because this is your farewell as producer, and just from a production standpoint, like just one thing to think about while you watch this video, especially when they flash to Bill, is how interesting the visual choices are.
Yeah, I wonder who my counterpart is at the at Club Random.
They definitely don't have a counterpart to me.
I think it's Bill himself. All right, but let's see how the conversation goes.
I mean, yeah, of course. I mean, we have no argument about that. As I always say to the woke, we voted for the same person. You're just why she lost.
Do you think that there would have been? I'm curious. Do you think any Democrat? I have an opinion on this. Do you think any Democrat would have been able to beat Trump?
I am all in on Mamdani.
Wait. Okay. Wait. Well, let's stick
I'm fucking with it.
In 2024, do you think anybody on the left could have defeated Trump? I have an answer for this, but I want to hear what you have to say.
Okay. I mean, I'm a Californian, and I'm friendly with our governor, who I also get on his case and have for being far too left. And it's becoming like we're friends, so it's kind of a kidding thing. But, like I will talk to him about the first thing when I see him. I won't even say his name. I'll just start on the potholes, or I couldn't get my solar hooked up, or all the crazy of California that he has to wear as baggage. I mean, it's a state where it's hard to buck that, but yeah, I think you could, and he's starting to. He has moved to the right, or let's say the center, on 3 big issues that I could name. I won't bore the crowd, or maybe we will, but and this is what I've been hoping he could do. It's a lot of baggage, but I always thought this guy has what it takes to be a presidential winner, because he's just really smart. He's a great fighter. Like, he's mean, which is great. He knows how to be mean. This
was the first time he mentioned Mamdani. I did kind of research, so he goes a little bit more in depth early on. So we should skip. I mean, later on, but we should skip.
So I just like his answer to the question, which, as I recall, was which Democrat could have beaten Trump in 2024.
Right.
Was to do 5 minutes about how Gavin Newsom maybe couldn't because he has too much California baggage, but maybe one day he could, and who knows, and hear all my thoughts about Gavin Newsom?
Our boy is fried. He doesn't know what the question was.
All right.
Yeah. I also, it was mostly about. I mean, it was very Trumpian. He was like, he's a friend. He's a friend of mine. I mean, he's way too far to the left, but he's mean. He's very mean. So I think
we like him. We like him.
we like
even though
him.
he's on the left.
Yeah.
He's a little woke.
Yeah. This is what I say to the woke is also a really good sentence.
Personally, I say quite a bit to the woke as well, but that's maybe the one thing Bill and I have in common.
Yeah, you guys
possibly from not entirely identical perspectives, but I suppose remains to be seen. What do we got?
Mom Donnie, mayor, is not a great harbinger for the Democratic Party. That is not a great.
Like, and can I just say real quick, like, I'm not a huge fan of like the microaggression framework as a way to like analyze these things, but the way that he says "Mom Donnie" is just kind of makes my skin crawl. Like Mom
Feels
Donnie.
like a hate crime.
Yeah, it feels.
I was actually a little annoyed by how, like, arbitrarily, like there's no good reason I should have been, but I was by how Buttigieg was saying Netanyahu's name. Like it was just sort of like it was like a little bit too much emphasis in this way that I don't know how else to put it. People like Pete Buttigieg use when they're pronouncing foreign words and they want to sound smart.
Netanyahu. Yeah. All right. Let's let him have his say though. Let's let him have his say for a bit.
Look,
it is a testament.
Maybe you
to
like him. Maybe he's your boy.
It is a testament to the fact. Here's what I think. I think it's a testament to the fact that despite what in the past might have seemed like disqualifying factors, I think that people are drawn to the individual candidates who can stand out among fields of very rote, boring politicians.
You kind of look like him,
I look like
I'm just saying.
like Zoran Mamdani.
I don't know how you could like this guy, but okay.
I think he is. I really don't have a whole lot of opinions on the New York mayoral race because I really haven't followed that race.
Oh fuck!
Who
are you fucking talking to here? You with your show and getting out of bed at 3 a.m, stoned out of your mind to report, doesn't have thoughts on the New York mayoral race where New York City is about to nominate. Well, he's definitely going to be the Democratic candidate for mayor. Yeah. Someone who has said things like the government should take over the means of production. I'm not going to suggest what political party of the past that is aligned with, but I think we all know it begins with a C. That's pretty crazy stuff. And the ugly streak of anti-Semitism that is going through the far left of the Democratic Party, that is going to be the downfall. I mean, I would hope that at least the Jews would get on that page.
I think, well, here's what I do think as it relates to like Jews in New York. I think that if the Jews wanted a candidate to consolidate behind, if Mamdani was not their speed.
Yeah. So just a couple of points about this. First of all, I do want to just try to, take responsibility for my shortcomings. And as the woke say, I want to do better. I was actually drinking coffee earlier, which is not very festive for Jake's final appearance. So I do have some whiskey here, so I'm doing better, right? But secondly, when he says, "Oh, Mamdani said he wanted to socialize the means of production," you know what political party of the past that sounds like? Well, starts with C. It's like, okay, perhaps he means the Cooperative Commonwealth Federation, which was the predecessor of the NDP in Canada. That one starts with C. Or perhaps this one doesn't start with C, but it starts with L. There was the Labour Party of the UK for most of its history was committed by Clause 4 of its party's constitution with the long-term goal of socializing the means of production. So Clause 4 said the party's aim was to, quote, secure for workers by hand or brain the full fruits of their industry and the most equitable distribution thereof that may be possible on the basis of the common ownership of the means of production, distribution, and exchange in the best obtainable system of popular administration and control of each industry or service. That was in the original Labor Party constitution, and they only finally got rid of that in the 1990s as part of Tony Blair's sort of swing towards the center that paralleled what Bill Clinton was doing in the U.S. and involved embracing free market economics. The social democrats who governed Vienna when they built all of the sort of world-renowned amazing public housing system there, we're certainly committed to the long-term goal of socializing the means of production. I mean, it's actually, New York City is probably on a fairly short list of the biggest cities in the Western world that have never been governed by a socialist mayor, except for that's not totally true. I mean, LaGuardia is kind of socialist adjacent. I don't know. But,
Dinkins was a DSA member. I don't know about all that, though. That I literally just know that fact.
Yeah, I know he was at one point. I guess I don't know if I couldn't say for sure whether he was when he was mayor or not. But like this idea that, somebody thinking the long-term sort of horizon of their politics is socializing the means of production, that like the only people who've ever thought that were like the Communist Party of the Soviet Union is really, I don't know. I mean, far be it from me to suggest that Bill Maher doesn't know very much about history, but like that's kind of incredible to me. Also, like Zoran Mamdani is leading among Jewish New York voters by like double digits right now.
I mean, you're expecting a lot from a guy who's slurring his S's because of how fucked up he is. You can really tell what point of the show. Hopefully, I'll get there later tonight. Where
I was gonna say I'm gonna try to get on Bill's level, but yeah.
So you really like this guy. Yeah. You really like this guy.
or at least try to get to the level of the guy who's head of ICE that shows up on Fox. That's just like drunk out of his mind the entire time and.
Yeah. But I mean, I think it does feel very patronizing as a Jewish New York voter to have this motherfucker say like, I hope that Jews would at least figure out that this guy is anti-Semitic, and he just brings. I understand this is his chill show, but he just throws that charge out without any backing whatsoever, just associating with the far left. The one thing I do agree with Bill that this guy Brian Tyler Cohen, who I don't know very well, I think it's such a bullshit answer to just say, oh, I can't comment because I don't live in New York. Like, Bill is correct on an interpersonal level about whoever this guy is. That's the only thing.
He's doing like lots of Democrats do that. Like they don't want to take an opinion one way or the other about Zoran because they don't quite like the optics of insulting the voters or saying they're not going to back the Democratic nominee, but they also can't bring themselves to say anything positive about them. So they'll just do this like, it's not. I'm not a New York City voter. Right? Why would I follow that election? I have no opinion.
I genuinely think that he actually is part of his own social media art team, and he's just too busy making anti-Trump memes, which honestly, like the past couple of months, my feed is just filled up with him, and I've actually had to like block him in particular on social media just because it's all just anti-Trump. Anti-Trump meme after anti-Trump meme, and it's just
he's kind of on the resistance front. I do like Bill Maher, kind of like lightly flirting with him though. Like you do kind of look like him. Like you're looking pretty cute, while just like drunkenly taking taking a swig of whatever he's drinking. But anyway, Cale, did you have anything, or should we?
No, I mean, I think Bill Maher, his I don't know, involvement in media and in politics has entirely been in a period where there really is no left opposition. There is no left organizing. There is no like organized left. And so just doing lazy, like, oh yeah, that guy is associated with the wrong things. Like he can throw these things out, and in the past he probably could have been on the right side of not the morally right side, but he might have gotten these things correct because, you know, when people stick their necks out and they are, you know, swimming up against stream against, you know, what's politically normal, they don't make it very far. And what's unique about the Mamdani campaign, the thing that most of the mainstream media is completely ignoring, because they all want to talk about TikTok videos and, you know, oh, Zoran's a good looking guy, he wears a suit. The thing that they don't talk about is the fact that there's 50,000 door knockers who went to tons and tons, I think it was over 2 million doors in New York City, and talked to people and said, you know, this is what the platform is. And I would imagine most of the people who voted for Mamdani don't really give a shit about his TikTok videos, or maybe didn't even see them. The fact that Zoran's a good-looking guy who's well-spoken probably wasn't an important part in them voting for him. And that's something that the media, the chatter class, doesn't really understand. And it's something where Bill Maher is going to be just completely behind the curve in this particular election. And it's this one because of this unique aspect to this election that in most other normal elections, Bill can say this and it's like, yeah, I guess, you know, that he's probably going to end up being right because the powers that be are going to, you know, do what they always do.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the fact that Zoran is a particularly charismatic and naturally talented politician, I mean, I think helps, you know, sort of get people's attention, right? But I think then the question is what you say to them, right? And I think that, like, really, you know, obviously, like, look, I mean, he's taken he's taken a million positions on a million issues. Sometimes, you know, sometimes of his own initiative, sometimes because, like, people just ask him about things that are, you know, which countries he'd visit, you know, after he you know, became mayor and weird shit like that. But I mean, like, really, at least from a distance, right, from everything I've seen, right, it seems like the man is just extraordinarily message disciplined about the bread and butter issues. I mean, this is, I mean, really more so, I think, than any other sort of, you know, Bernie crap kind of politician I've seen since Bernie himself, right? You know, that he just tends to sort of relentlessly talk about that. I mean, even, you know, I mean, even when, like, you know, Trump and, you know, all these, like, MAGA influencers right after he won the primary were saying just this, you know, outrageously, like, crazy, bigoted, anti-Muslim things about him. You watch, like, the press conference he did about that, he was like, there was like 30 seconds of, wow, that's pretty gross and racist. And then he immediately did this pivot. It's like they're trying to change the subject from affordability housing, and, like, you know, he goes into his core bit, right?
Right.
You know?
Yeah. He's saying they're talking about me and my identity because they want to kick you off your healthcare.
Yeah, exactly.
And most people understand that because most people are actually pretty reasonable and have good common sense. They're like, oh yeah, I see what's going on.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like, and I mean, I think there's actually, you know, there's even to credit where credit's due, right? There's an article by a past guest on the show who I obviously disagree with on many sort of broader ideological subjects, but I thought it was a good article. Sora
Curtis Yarvin. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no, look, that makes good points from time to time. Like, yeah. So anyway, he has some really insightful things to say about Zoran's skull shape. That's like, he analyzed all the pictures. No, it's Sora Abamari, right? Who has had an article in Unheard called Zoran Mamdani's critics are playing identity politics. Where he talks about I think he does, you know, I think he talks about the sort of relentless focus on affordability and housing, you know, economic issues. And, you know, he says in there, right, while he's targeted specific New York communities with videos in which he speaks Hindi and Spanish, Mamdani has usually managed to shift every discussion back to issues of class and inequality, right? So he mentioned specifically a campaign speech in which he highlighted his father's Jim Crow activism, as instructive. He says, although he began with themes of racial discrimination in the past, the punchline, right, was quoting Martin Luther King saying, like, what good is it to have a right to sit on a lunch counter if you can't afford lunch, right? The punchline of the video was this takeaway that it's like, okay, having won these civil rights victories, the remaining work to be done is best done by this kind of universalistic economic agenda. And I think that there are a few people who are more focused on it, and whatever. I mean, maybe it's not. I guess maybe I'm like stretching the limits of like the framing here, because we're sort of using Bill Maher as an excuse to as a fun way to talk about things that actually matter, and sort of shitting on Bill Maher. So it's like it feels a little ridiculous to be like, well, what Bill Maher doesn't understand, right? It's like, well, Bill Maher doesn't understand anything. Right? That's just not interesting. But but I think that I think that it is striking how many of these clowns sort of talk about the campaign as if Mamdani had been doing something fundamentally different than what I just described.
I'm using Zoran as an excuse to talk about Bill, but I think we're almost done. So let's just see. You say all that, but let's see what Bill says.
That they made a mistake by putting Cuomo out as
they did, but that's past history. On my hate list, Trump talking about how he's going to have to go after New York City. I thought the Republicans were all about states' rights and get the federal government. They're too powerful. All
right, so he basically threw in a couple pot shots and then just started pivoting to something else that he wanted to talk about.
I don't even understand that the pivot halfway through that sentence, right? Is like, well, that's Cuomo, that's the past, but on my list of hate. And then it's like literally he never finished the sentence because halfway through it occurred to him that Trump said this thing that he was mad about.
Yeah, which is, we can agree that Trump sucks, but
sure,
I'm sure the candidate that he supported is the one that is conspiring and coordinating with Trump. So I don't know if there's any kind of acknowledgement of that dissonance, that cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
All right, so we do have I think we have time to watch a little bit of one more. This is maybe up Cale's alley, we'll see, but we need another I feel bad for saying this is up Cale's alley and then starting with a Shapiro video.
Let's not use that expression.
But maybe you'll agree.
It's a Vic Chibber trashing Zoran.
Yeah. Well, let's see what Ben Shapiro has to say. I actually haven't watched this yet.
The only real difference between marriage and prostitution is the price and the duration of the contract.
So get ready for more of that. Get ready for more of that, because if you think that the left ever has a limit, you are wrong. They will always go further. I will say it over and over and over again. The left wing is Zoran Mamdani. The left wing is not some moderate senator from Minnesota. It's not Amy Klobuchar, who's bad enough in many ways. It is Zoran Mamdani. It's Zoran Mamdani, period. This is the new Democratic Party, and they are all falling in line.
Was
Senator Slotkin from Michigan? She is supposed to be one of the moderates, Alyssa Slotkin. She's not a moderate at all. Here she is, suggesting that Mamdani's messaging is perfectly fine, perfectly good. Here she was on Meet the Press.
I've said very openly that I never would be called an expert on New York City politics, but the two messages were like a blinking red light. How can you miss them? People are still extremely focused on the cost of living and how they can't get ahead. Still the motivating issue. And then number two, they want that new generation of leadership.
Oh, well, I mean, if you call pro-terrorism a new generation of leadership, I guess it's all totally fine. By the way, there's an open Michigan Senate seat, and Democrats may well nominate a Zoran Mamdani type for that Senate seat. That is one of the candidates who's up in the Democratic primary right now, as Politico is covering today. Meanwhile, AOC, of course, called on the rest of the Democratic Party to stand behind Zoran Mamdani. Quote, New Yorkers.
So the person he's referring to is actually a past guest on the show, Abdul El-Sayed, who I assume he's a Zoran Mamdani type, because he's like a leftist and he's a Muslim. Like other than that, I really can't. I really don't know what makes him the Zoran Mamdani type.
I mean, even the quote that when they go to Slotkin and she's saying he's dealing with affordability and he's young and new, and then Ben has to interject, and she even supports radicalism, like or whatever he said. That it's like there's nothing in that quote. Like so far, this is deeply unimpressive.
That was so milquetoast. That was and even with the same fucking shit of like, I'm no expert on what happens in New York. Well, like a lot of politicians seem like a fucking expert about what's happening on Israel. You know what I mean? Like when they support, sending bombs for a genocide, but then when it comes to the biggest city in our nation, they're no experts.
Well, especially like, are we going to pretend all these people like Hakeem Jeffries did a thing? It's like, well, I don't live in New York City, so why would I, right? It's like, motherfucker, you don't go all around the country campaigning for Democratic candidates. Like, you're going to just pretend it's like, oh, New York City.
Listen, I'm no resident of Springfield, Missouri, but I do know, so I can't comment.
I like Ben saying that Mamdani is the Democratic Party. See, all the Democrats are just like Mamdani, and you cut to these Democrats who are just like, well, we have to be really careful about what we're saying because I'm not part of that. I don't really know what's going on there. And, we should have a friendly conversation because it's a land of contrasts. And it's just like, yeah, this sounds exactly like Mamdani, these people that put you to fucking sleep, like Buttigieg.
Cale, I didn't know you had a pretty good Slotkin in the holster there. You got to bust that out. We've been featuring. The last few episodes have been Slotkin heavy. Didn't we have Slotkin on the last cheat?
Yeah, we had Slotkin last week.
Yeah. He was in the post game talking to us about CIA and trying to
recruit. We talked. We played a clip of her.
We played a clip of her at the beginning of last week's episode because she was the whole
equivocating.
Yeah, well, and she didn't know, or she claimed not to know about the Michigan connection to the Epstein scandal. So
she doesn't know. She's not an expert on a lot of stuff except for making life better for her state. Like that's making things good for simple folks. That's all she does.
The simple down home Michiganders who don't know about any of this fancy big city stuff, and we do think, I guess they do things a little differently there in New York, right? Which is like, she represents the same state as Rashida Tlaib. I mean, come on.
What I do like is that Ben Shapiro brought up Slotkin to shit on her, and then we just ended up doing the same for completely different reasons. While
we're shitting on people, if I could request 30 seconds of shitting, right? I mean that opening clip, like two points about this, right? None of this is like, I guess, that like, novel, but like, one, it is remarkable that the way that other Ben treats it in the rest of the clip we've watched so far, you would think that the speaker at that convention was Zoran Mamdani, right? You'd think that was
it's crazy
saying that like marriage was just like prostitution.
Marriage is just like prostitution. I support both. Sex work is work.
It's the ultimate,
I've gone so woke. I've just gone in a circle.
Now you actually support the traditional family because it's just like sex work, and you support sex work.
And marriage is work.
which I support.
No, that's good. Like, it's like, marriage is work. Nice, like normie sentiment, but you add in some clapping emojis. Marriage is work. No, absolutely. But yeah, he's treating this as if Zoran said that, which is just like absurdly dishonest. And of course, it's not just his move. I'm sure probably where he got it was the New York Post did a big headline about, Zoran Mamdani's DSA comrades talk about, abolition of the nuclear family or whatever, whatever the headline was. And of course, it is true that this is a cheap smear. Zoran has never said anything like that. In fact, he's constantly emphasized that he wants to make it easier for people to start families or people who have families.
he just got married.
Yeah, the man literally just got married, right? So like he's probably not likely, certainly where Mrs. Mamdani can hear it to say that marriage is just like prostitution. So yeah, he just got married. He clearly isn't against marriage. He's constantly talking about how he wants to make it easier for people to, start families, raise kids. So, families with young children are leaving New York at such a high rate. And, he wants to try to reverse that, with these policies to make it more affordable, to provide people with childcare, all of that stuff, right? So clearly, as a characterization of Mamdani, it's a ridiculous smear. Look, I'm not gonna lie and say that I've never, nothing that's happened in the last 10 years has made the thought cross my mind about whether this is an organization that I'm going to stay in forever. But like, I have stuck it out. I'm still a DSA member. I have been since 2015.
I thought you were going to say a Ben Shapiro subscriber.
Yeah, no, like the Daily Wire's premium subscriber club. Exactly. Yeah. That's what I've been a member of for 10 years.
He's watching all the Gina Carlino movies.
Exactly. Well, that's why I can't quit, right? Yes. Sometimes the pundits say things I don't like, but the films, I can't live without the films. Yeah. So, but I think so. It's like, look, have I seen stupid shit in DSA? Yes, I have. Young Cale here has certainly seen some stupid shit. I believe.
Oh yeah, deep shit.
Yeah, you remember the that classic clip montage of the 2019 DSA convention where people are saying their rules against clapping and stuff.
That convention did not happen. As we all know, DSA was started in 2020. That convention has been wiped from our minds. That was all hallucination.
Okay,
listen, the party says that event did not happen. Are you disagreeing with the party?
I think I have one of those Philip K. Dick false or implanted memories of a story about Cale actually getting into an argument at the convention because he started clapping. But in any case,
yes, from a delivery person with a Jesus fish beaming a pink light into your head.
Yeah, exactly. But deep cut. Reed Vallis. But in any case, that's so it's like, look, I've seen some stupid shit in DSA, but I also that there is no way that as many as 5% of DSA members would nod along with the shit that this particular panelist is saying in that clip, right? This is you have a large organization, whatever, right? So it's again, I think as a characterization of Zoran's views, as a characterization of the media and DSA members' views, this is a ridiculous smear. But the other thing is also, these people who say shit like this are wreckers. They're handing the New York Post and Ben Shapiro ammunition to do segments like this one, right? And it's you're actively, undermining the effort, right? And you shouldn't do that, and you should feel bad about yourself, and you should re-examine your life choices, right? That's it. That's not. I have nothing funny to say. I just wanted to get in 30 seconds of that before we keep going.
Look, more people should be asking themselves, do I need to say this on a panel? Just ask the question. Ask the question.
Knew Andrew Cuomo was backed by Trump's orbit. That's why he lost the primary. Now we have confirmation. It's time for Dem leaders to unite behind Zoran Mamdani. If they don't now, how can they call for party unity later? We must lead by example. Let's win together. So there are no limits to what Democrats will. But of course, AOC agrees with Zoran Mamdani. I mean, that's the pretty open secret. It is not that Democrats are uncomfortable with Zoran Mamdani.
What?
I've been saying this for years. When Democrats look at looters and rioters during the BLM protests, when Democrats...
I mean, we don't need to hammer this home, but just not even recognizing the different factions within the Democratic Party. Same within, you're saying, DSA is a multifaceted organization, but he's saying he's using AOC as just like that equals Democrats. It doesn't really make any sense whatsoever if you're like in
I mean, even DSA, right? Yeah, it's a sprawling organization with like I don't know, certainly at least like 40 or 50 caucuses. They hate each other, whatever, right? But like, that's at least like if you're a DSA, you're at least in a sort of well-defined part of the political spectrum.
Sure.
I mean, the Democratic Party, I mean, is not even really a party in any sort of normal global sense of what a political party is, where it's like everybody, there's like a platform and you're a member and get kicked out and all that stuff, right? It's a sort of ballot line. With
Andrew Cuomo ran as a Democrat, but continue.
Yeah, right, exactly, right. There's some like weird machinery attached to that ballot line, but it's also like its own thing, whatever, right? It's a place where you tend to get people who are not conservatives, except sometimes they are conservatives, right? I mean, that's what the Democratic Party is. So like
very analytical of you, Ben.
Yeah, I really workshopped that. Like I was like, okay, what are the necessary and sufficient conditions for the Democrats? You're probably not a conservative.
We 2 hours of the pre-production meeting was just charting that out.
He's like, I can't really respond to this one.
Formal logic, yeah. Anyway,
yeah, exactly, right. It's like no, but it's like it's not it's not even a well-defined piece of the political spectrum. And what he's doing here is he's trying to give the smoking gun that all Democrats are the same and it's all Zoran. It's like he picks AOC. It's like, okay, but you're picking somebody who's in the same general like part, right? Of within the same general subset, right? Of Democrats, right? So it's like, it's like, yeah, right. You're talking about something, whatever. I've got, my criticisms, whatever. We don't need to get into all that
sure.
now, right? Like, but it's like you're basically talking about like a social democrat who, is, has been, like you run down the issue position. It's like, yeah, she mostly agrees with somebody like Zoran thinks. Like, so it's like, yes, of course she supports it, but it's like you're treating this as if it were Nancy Pelosi saying this.
Honestly, he might be doing Democrats a fucking favor, because if you look at the favorability of most Democrats and the Democratic Party in general, it's extremely low right now. So I'm not someone who wants to, necessarily say you could run someone with Zoran's exact politics everywhere in the country. Do you know what I mean? I think some people can over apply that a little bit. I will admit that, but I do think that, sure, someone who is able to convincingly win a primary against the political establishment. I mean, yeah, sure, Ben, you're right. Every Democrat is Zoran Mamdani, right? If only. I mean, it's just if anything, he's probably helping the reputation of Democrats.
Look at left-wing terrorists who commit acts of violence. Unfortunately,
left-wing
they don't
terrorists
look at their viewpoints as the problem. Instead, what they do is they say those people are just too passionate. Their problem is they just took it too far. So the best you'll get from a Democrat is that Zoran Mamdani's heart is in the right place, but he just took it too far. Not that his viewpoint is bad, not that his worldview is corrupt. No, it's that he might be a little bit, too fresh. He might just be a little bit too green. He hasn't really sanded off the edges yet, but that's what makes him so appealing, you see. He's the new wave of the Democratic Party, and so we must side behind him. And of course, they are doing this oppositionally because they're suggesting that if it were to be Andrew Cuomo, who, by the way, lifelong Democrat, who is not in any way, shape, or form a moderate, but Andrew Cuomo is too far to the right for them, because they want to move into this new Democratic era. That is what they want, desperately. The mainstream Democratic Party is falling in line. Chuck Schumer's day is over. Nancy Pelosi, who I spent my entire political life looking at Nancy Pelosi as the left wing of the Democratic Party, she now looks like Scoop Jackson. It's unbelievable. Zoran Mamdani, of course, is using the fact that everybody who is not a socialist nut job does not want to see him be mayor as an excuse to say that he should be mayor. Because if Donald Trump and people who like Donald Trump are supporting Andrew Cuomo, that means that you have to vote for the communist who hates the country and believes that America is a nefarious force in the world, and also that maybe Hamas had a point.
I would be remiss if I did not directly address some of the news that we saw come out just a few hours ago, which is that the president of this country, Donald Trump, has been coordinating with Andrew Cuomo in direct conversation with the former governor. It is Trump billionaires who have been opposing our campaign's vision for a city that New Yorkers can afford.
All I can say is do it. Seriously, Democrats, do it. Let's see how it works out for you. It's a bold plan, Cotton. We'll see how it works out. You want to make a communist the mayor of New York City, the financial hub of planet Earth? Well, we'll see how long all the people who actually pay the bills in New York decide to stay there and keep the lights on. We'll see how that works out. I always assumed that restless sleep was inevitable. Night after night, tossing, turning, waking up with that aching back. I convinced myself that's how sleep was supposed to be. And honestly, when I'm...
I do like the fact that he does his ad reads that quickly.
Yeah. Well, you know, he's endorsing medicine to cure sleep apnea and Zoran Mamdani for mayor of New York City. So that's, you know, I can't fault that.
No, I mean, look, I actually think we can stop the video. It's fine. I actually think it's nice that he ended on this beautiful, you know, note of unity, right? That like actually I think we ended on a point of agreement between GTAA and the Daily Wire, which is that we both want to run the experiment.
I mean, look, as you know, someone who thinks a lot about politics and leans more on the structuralist side of how economic forces shape politics, I'm a bit of a cynic. I'm optimistic, but I'm a cynic. And my outlook for a Mamdani mayoralship is that more times than not, it's probably not going to be what people in the GSA and on the left want. That there's probably going to be a lot of roadblocks, but I'm 100% in favor of run the experiment. I want to see it happen. I want a dirty, scrappy fight. I want to see just how far we can push everything.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So it's like, yeah,
I'm with Shapiro.
Yeah, exactly. I'm with Ben Shapiro. I too want this to happen, and so we can all see how it plays out. Right. I'm less sure about why he wants a generational political talent to have this huge megaphone and spend the next few years fighting for wildly popular economic policies. But you know, whatever. I'm not going to look a gift Ben in the mouth, right? I will take the Zoran endorsement.
Right. Well, to me, the truth of what he's saying is that for the last 40, 50 years, the left typically does lose. So his bet is that Zoran will come in and be lame duck or be ousted or something. Basically, nothing gets done, and it's, you know, a perfect example. The right gets to say, this is what happens when you elect the left. You know, we didn't have to go through 4 years with a president, Sanders or something like that, or AOC. We got the mayor of New York City, and point blank, that's why it doesn't work. And again, the reason why he's able to say that is because the left typically doesn't win, and when they do win, they typically don't get very far. And what the left should say in response is, okay, so that means that our work actually starts now, that getting him elected was the easy part, and that, you know, one, we don't know how far we can go in 2025 or 2026 compared to, you know, when we look at the failures of the left in the 70s, 80s, 90s, etc. But also because we do know about the failures of the 70s, 80s, 90s, whatever, we know that we actually do have to do a little bit of light work going forward. So he's right in the sense that most likely things don't turn out our way, which then the left should interpret as, oh yeah, we really have to do something.
Yeah. Well, I agree. And I think just going back to like why I wanted to talk about Zoran at all is I think, you know, invoking your opening argument, Ben, I think it's extremely weak solace for people who are actually dying in Palestine right now. Like all of the progress that has been made. I don't think the people I don't think they want to hear like, oh, actually 15 senators or whatever, you know, like I think it's not, you know, it's not really making a difference in the way we want it to. But I still think that having an openly pro-Palestine mayor of New York City, having all of these senators speaking out about what's going on, it is maybe, at least for the future, a positive change that I did not think would have been possible, even with like the genocide that Israel is carrying out. So, you know, I think that sometimes like the tendency toward pragmatism can come from like over prognostication. I'm throwing a lot of big words out here, but just like, oh, like I'm doing this like crazy 3D chess of, I think if this happens, that's going to happen. You know what I mean? Like, I just think like ultimately with, you know, I mean, you can't abandon your reason and your expectations of like what might actually happen. But at the end of the day, as Cale and Ben Shapiro and Ben Burgis are saying, like, let's run the fucking experiment, and who knows what's going to happen, right? Some good might actually come out of it. So,
man, I had a nickel for every time somebody said, as Cale and Ben Burgis and Ben Shapiro were saying. Yeah, no,
the triple entendre.
Yeah, exactly. Look, I think one way maybe to connect the dots here is like the opening argument. A lot of that was about the sort of structural analysis of why what's happening in Palestine is happening. But the other half of that is why it can, you know, the U.S. involvement in it can continue to happen when, you know, like, yeah, I mean, it's only 8% of Democrats, but it's even 32% of Americans, period, are in favor of what's going on in Gaza, and you know, I think that has to do with the sort of general state of American democracy, and you know, and how, I mean, certainly, you know, foreign policy is the part of the American state that's the most walled off from popular pressure, right? But
right.
I mean, in general, you know, in general, I mean, the sort of disconnect between anything. I mean, Medicare for all. I mean, like what the polls say about that, right? Versus the percentage of politicians, you know, who reflect the preferences, et cetera, right? Like this is, you know, you get things like these extreme horrors that, you know, are being perpetrated that, you know, the vast majority of, you know, I mean, certainly only a minority of Americans, you know, support, and you know, huge numbers of Americans are opposed to, right? You know, given that sort of general backdrop of the sort of miserable state of American democracy. And so I think stuff like this, you know, not that there's like a direct causal relationship between the two, I guess, unless Netanyahu like travels to New York and Zoran actually fulfills his campaign promise to
yeah.
you know, carry out the ICC arrest warrant, right? But unless that happens, then there isn't much direct connection. But I think that the sort of larger societal problem, right, you know, in which this can happen. I mean, this is, you know, if you, I mean, look, this is not anything that's like interesting or new in a certain sense, but it's like, yeah, and the only way out of that is to build up an effective workers' movement, you know, in union context, but also politically and in electoral politics. And, you know, I think stuff like, you know, getting the mayor of the biggest city in the country. I mean, it's not everything, but it's certainly not nothing as far as that larger cause goes.
Yeah, it's a little wild to imagine that being a possibility and just being like, nah, like, I don't care about that. You know, I don't live in New York.
Yeah. Or you could pre-convince yourself that he's a sellout, which is what all the most brilliant people in left podcasting are doing. But in any case, on this corner of left podcasting, since we are you know, finishing out Cale Jake, same thing. Finishing out.
He never really figured out the difference. It's been 4 fucking years, but he's always like, "Hey, say Cale.
Hey, you get going with those edits."
Yeah.
Those production meetings are wild sometimes.
I actually didn't. We didn't tell him that there was a switch for the first like couple of years. Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah. Just, you know, kept being like, you know, Cale, this is just like when you were producing for the Jacobin show, and you remember you said it's like,
I'd be like, what are you talking
about? What? Yeah, no, this is the end of Jake's 4-year run. So I believe we have. I think this is 3 hours. It's 180 minutes long. I think we have a little collage of Jake's contributions to the show.
Yeah, so I have two 2-hour-long clips to play. First, real quick, I just for this is indulge me. This is just nostalgia's sake. This was my first ever appearance. We could see how confident I am now compared to the extremely green. Yes, Andy.
And you have, and Ben calls you Cale in the clip too, right?
Yes. He actually thinks this is Cale in the first clip.
All right, I am now joined by a new character in the GTAA extended universe, Jake. Jake, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to watch this with you. My name's Jake Appett. I'm a labor organizer in the New York City area. Excited to start working on helping you produce this show.
It's okay, guys. You can wipe the tears out of your eyes. And then
you were having a great time.
Yeah, I was pretty nervous. And then the
like,
final.
God, fucking damn! What did I agree to at the bar?
And then the final thing is, I think I've been pretty touched by some of the comments I see. Wishing me well. I really appreciate it. I think I'm a man of many strengths, but I think one of my main strengths is listening, right? Active listening. So I prepared about 45 minutes, just a little montage to show some of the highlights of my listening tenure during my 4 years of producing the show. There was some amazing listening, some world-class nodding. You think it's easy, that's what Cale said. Like, it looks easy what I do, but when Ben is, making his points, that kind of concerned, interested face that doesn't veer into like the Tucker Carlson, you don't want to go too hard.
Never go full Tucker.
Yeah. Slack-jawed, Luke's, I remember, some of my greatest hits. No, I really appreciate it, guys. I meant what I said at the end of that video. I appreciate you listening and watching. Yeah, it's like you think I'm good, but then I bring in like an OG like Cale, and you see some of the listening faces that he's made during the show, and you remember like who's really a master. But I think we're still doing the post game tonight with I invited my buddy Jay on, who's actually like, I met him. He recognized me. We'll talk about it, but he recognized me from the show and we became friends. So I made a real life friend out of the internet. So he will be on. So for Patreon subscribers, there's still a little bit more Jake, and I hope to come on, future post games, maybe even some main shows if I like write a book or something and I need to talk about it. But I appreciate everyone here over the past 4 years for giving me the opportunity. And I think I even had something else to say, but I've downed a couple whiskeys right now and I might not have it. But yeah, I know I've really appreciate it. And then I'm leaving the show, mostly gonna be focusing on writing, getting my life together. I finished my MFA. I'm working on a novel actually about leftist podcasters. I'm about 100 pages in. So I've got some firsthand knowledge of that world. So
yeah, it had been 3 years and Schmen still didn't know my name.
Schmen still thought I was Schmale.
Well, Jake, as you know, producers of YouTube shows are largely unappreciated. They don't get thanks. People don't realize that the YouTube producers of these shows make it all happen. They really are the chair that the actual hosts are standing on, or sitting on, or whatever.
That's why Jake's at the bottom.
That's right. If it wasn't for people like you, Jake, who do the hard work every week to make this show happen, put the graphics together, write the scripts, send out the links, send out the many emails, and encourage people to get into the chat. You know, write the Jacobin articles, write the Unheard articles. People don't realize how much you do.
Yeah. No, I haven't even read. I haven't even read one of my Jacobin articles in 4 years.
Yeah. Write the Zero books. Write the repeater books.
We still have to talk about how mad people got about the stuff that you put in Cancel Comedians. Like I was really not expecting that.
Well, like if you let's just say that
it's time to write another Zero book.
If you were to put out a video about any like conceptual misunderstandings that are happening on this show, they're all being written by a guy that hasn't read a word of Marx, right? I'm just ghostwriting. It's all ChatGPT at this point. No, and in all seriousness, Cale, I think I detected a little bit of Stuart, it actually is a detective noir podcast leftist mystery. It's about someone who one of the podcast members goes missing, and it's like a detective noir thing of the other guy trying to find him. So that was actually my novel, I think he's referring to. So yeah, got to do some promo in this book that's going to come out in like 4 years. But anyway, Cale, you know better than anyone the unheralded work that producers do. So producers of the world unite. Yes, that's true, Stuart. It really is about that. So look out for my novel in 3 to 4 years, maybe, hopefully sooner. But anyway, I'm very appreciative. We should probably get to the post game. Are we cool with me having the last word on this episode? Anything else? All right, let's do it. Left is best.